Life is strange, is it not? One moment we are drifting along lost in this dream, be it a good dream or a nightmare. The next moment we are awake and discover the reality of our existence. For me, my awakening took my life. In order for you to understand this correctly, let me start my tale from the beginning. I could hear the cars zooming past on the bridge above me, the distant cursing of irritated motorists as they impatiently tried to get to their destination. The smell of urine and alcohol was ever present in this underpass that I called home. I did not have much, nor was I interested in anything. I used to be someone. I had a life that seemed as though it was a distant memory now. A wife and children that I have not seen in years. A career that I once enjoyed. I used to be happy. I can recount the moment that it all started to go downhill, or maybe it was always in decline. I was just too content to see it. Maybe if I told her I loved her more, hugged and kissed my kids more, maybe if I was a better husband and father, maybe they would still be here. Sometimes I can't tell if I am crazy or not, for I swear I feel her hand running through my hair as I sleep. I open my eyes and see her. Her ebony skin, flawless as always. Her hair like black silk, only finer. Eyes so deep that one can't help but to get lost in them. Losing her was like taking the heart out of my chest, the air from my lungs. Some nights, I swear, I can feel my oldest daughter sleeping on my chest, like she so often did. Could hear my youngest girl calling out for me, and the soft laughter of my son as he lay in his crib. Am I crazy because I can still see them as if they were here right now? I can see them as if in a memory that I was stuck behind a veil, a glass that prevented me from touching them. No matter how loud I shouted, how hard I cried, or how desperately I banged on the glass, they could not hear me. They could not see me. You can never understand the torture I have endured just thinking about them. My wife was my heart, my kids my soul. Now, here I lay, a heartless, soulless shell. A cadaver. I am more dead than alive. I have contemplated taking my life and joining them, but I was always too cowardly to do so. But not tonight. Tonight, I am hanging in this underpass. The rope is already around my neck. It seems as I get closer to death, that veil, that impenetrable glass begins to crack. I am coming, my love. Daddy will be home soon. I turn and look one last time at the night sky. I'm not going to miss living, for there is no life for me without them. I push the rock that is my last anchor in life from beneath my feet. The rope goes taut. I wonder when they find my body if they will see this smile on my face. The veil fades away, and for the first time, I can see them so clearly. I can feel my heart racing. I can feel it beating desperately in my throat. My head feels swollen. I am choking. I can feel myself dying. My eyes feel as if they are going to explode. The glass that kept them from me shattered. My wife looked up from the children and looked at me. She looked right in my eyes. I could not physically cry, but my soul was weeping. Tears ran down her beautiful ebony cheeks. Her tears looked like pearls as they slowly fell from her eyes. There was no joy in her eyes at seeing me. She shook her beautiful head. I could not hear her voice, but what she said was heard so loudly it was deafening.
No, not like this. It's not your time, love. Please go back.
If my heart could break any more, it would have. It felt like I was kicked in my gut. My children turned to me. "Not yet, Daddy," my oldest said. I did not know what to do or say. I wanted to touch them one more time, to tell them how much I loved them. Instead of the joy I expected to see, I was greeted with sadness. I started to fall. I don't know where I was falling. I was just falling. I did not care. All I could see was the look on her face. I felt something on my face, something on my body. I did not want to open my eyes and find myself alive, to see the underpass above me. I took a deep, painful breath. My throat hurt.
Is this him?
I heard a woman's voice say. I sighed and opened my eyes, expecting to see paramedics or a police officer. Instead, I was looking at a night sky that looked strange. The underpass was gone. I was laying on the grass. I wanted to sit up, but it hurt to try. So I looked around and saw a large woman standing by a fire. She was not fat large, she was muscled and tall, her skin a light brown, hair in a long black braid that fell down her back. She wore armour, actual armour that you would expect to see in some medieval movie. Her armour was regal, well kept, and looked as if it belonged to someone of station or position. I blinked my eyes, thinking, I'm hallucinating. Slowly I sat up and took a better look around. It seemed I was in some woods somewhere. The trees were huge and ancient-looking, their barks gnarled and twisted in a grotesque manner I have never seen before. It almost looked like the tree was screaming in agony. It gave me chills. Where the hell was I? The woman turned around, her armour making a scraping sound as she did. Her face surprised me. She was not beautiful, nor was she ugly. She was easy to look upon. Her nose was broad and lips full. Her eyes were a deep green that seemed to glow with a life all of its own.
Glad to see you are awake, Chosen.
Her voice was strangely soft for a woman of her size and build. I was expecting something deeper and masculine. She knelt down beside me and looked me over as if she were judging me.
Where am I?
I asked. She did not answer right away. She seemed to be deep in thought. For the first time, the symbol on her armour and shield was visible. It was something I recognised because it was the symbol of my community project. I was a bit confused. It was a crescent moon and star with a man sitting at the base of the moon, looking up at the star, his hands up in supplication or prayer. This was set upon a midnight blue backdrop. She saw me staring at the symbol.
You are in Darhaven, Chosen.
She finally replied. The confusion just kept getting deeper. Am I mad? Did I actually die and I am in some in-between world?
I can tell you are confused, Chosen.
She paused.
Come sit by the fire and warm yourself.
She helped me up and led me to a cushioned spot she had prepared for me. I saw 3 blankets lying next to the fire. I assumed one was for me. It was clear one was for her. But who was the third one for? The heat of the fire felt good upon my skin. I did not know how cold I was until I felt the warmth of the flames wash over me. Was I in shock? The woman walked to the other side of the fire and stood with her arms folded across her chest.
We have been waiting for thousands of years, Chosen.
She paused a moment. I could see the excitement in her eyes as she looked at me. It was the same reverence and awe-inspired look you would give a great man of power you respected. But somehow, it was deeper. It was filled with religious fervour and zeal, like I was some ordained holy man that she worshipped all her life, and suddenly he is here before her. She took a deep breath.
I am the Order of the Chosen. I have trained my whole life to guard and protect you. It was not known when you would come again to Darhaven. So we have been training for centuries and passing down the knowledge of the Chosen to every initiate. We were once the greatest army to ever be formed on Darhaven.
She paused again, as if thinking about the glory of days of old. Her expression looked saddened, almost heartbroken.
So many years passed, Chosen. So many centuries without a sign or anything from you. People lost faith. Our once great order fell apart, and all that is left is an old ruin of our former greatness and a few knights that are barely hanging on to the old ways.
She looked at me, fighting tears in her eyes.
Where have you been, Chosen?
She asked. Her gaze was penetrating. I could not turn away even if I wanted to. This seemed personal to her. Beyond the reverence of someone she was taught to worship. This was almost like she had suffered greatly because of her faith. I did not know what to tell her. I honestly had no clue what she was talking about. I'm still not sure where the hell I am, let alone if I am alive.
How do you know that I'm this chosen one? And what makes you so sure that I am him?
I asked. She took a deep breath. The armor on her broad shoulders creaked.
His skin will be the color of wet sand, his eyes black like a night void of stars. He will fall from the heavens, dead only to awaken when touched by one of his order. The trees will wither in the hall of the gods. All will know him by his symbol.
She recited and pointed at the symbol on her chest. My symbol, the symbol of Alki-Bulon. She turned her head to the sky and pointed. Far off in the distance I could see a star shining brightly in the night sky. That shining star was my symbol. Anyone who looked up at the sky could see it. Suddenly, a man stumbled out from the trees. He was bleeding heavily from a deep wound in his side. His face looked pale and blood coated his hands. He leaned on his sword like it was a cane. The blade was black and gleamed eerily in the firelight. He looked at me and smiled. He fell to his knees.
Finally, my Lord chosen, you have come.
The look of joy and peace in his eyes startled me. He looked as if all the pain and doubt he had was erased, like he could die knowing his faith was confirmed. The big woman rushed to his side.
Elder Ahmed,
She said as she caught him before he fell face first in the dirt. She held him in her arms.
Muazma, daughter of giants, and knight of the order of the chosen. You must do your duty. The enemies of our Lord are not far behind me. Protect him and get him to the ruins of Alki-Bulon.
Elder Ahmed gasped. His voice was barely audible. You could see Muazama's heart breaking in her eyes. He squeezed her hand and looked up at me.
I am sorry if I have failed you in any way, or that I ever doubted you.
He gasped painfully. I did not know what to do or say. A light above me started to glow brightly. I looked up, and it was my symbol. The light covered him. It was so bright that it was blinding. As suddenly as it came, it vanished. When our eyes adjusted to the darkness, he was gone. Muazama sighed heavily and grabbed her sword and shield. She faced the trees, waiting. My heart raced. I could hear people marching through the woods. I grabbed Elder Ahmed's sword. It felt surprisingly light in my hand. Its black blade started to glow faintly. My whole body felt warm and light, like I was standing on air.
it seems you have been reunited with your sword.
Muazama said softly. Before I could respond, several men burst out of the woods. They were pale men, their hair varied from blonde to red. Their armour had the insignia of a burning sun on it. They saw us and stopped. A tall, hawkish man stepped forward. I could feel Muazama tense up. She gripped her sword tightly. He looked us both over. His eyes lingered on Muazama's insignia.
You are of the order?
He asked, his voice raspy like he had a cold. Muazama did not answer.
We were following an old man who had stolen something that belonged to us.
The man started, then looked at the sword in my hand.
You are carrying what belongs to us. I care not how you came by it. Just return it to me and go about your business,
He said. He shifted his stance and placed his hand on the hilt of his sword. The men behind him did the same. I looked at the sword. I did not know who it belonged to. I just know it felt right wielding it. I shook my head. Muazama smiled and slashed the man's throat. She moved with a speed that I did not think was possible. The man stood there for a moment staring at me, oblivious to the fact his throat was cut. Blood spilled down his armour and he slumped forward. By the time his men realised they were in a fight, half of them were dead. Watching Muazama fight was like watching a dance. She slashed and killed with such grace it was almost beautiful. She moved around these men like the world had slowed down and she alone was unaffected by it. The fight was over before it began. Muazama stood in the middle of several bodies, wiping the blood off her blade and shield on the men's cloak.
We need to move, Chosen,
she said, and pointed east.
We are weeks, if not months away from the ruins of Alkebulan,
she said, and waited for me to start moving in that direction.